So, welcome to our month one review of living in Panama, what I have named why the bad parts are really the best. So if you've already researched moving to Panama, I'm sure you've heard about all the common complaints like the heat is brutal, it rains a lot, bureaucracy is brutal, and traffic is chaos. One of the most damaging myths though is that English is widely spoken here. So I don't really look at these downsides as downsides. It's more advantages. I think Panama really treats you like an adult, whereas the Western countries, probably all Western countries, or at least all the ones I'm aware of, they treat us like children, right? There's rules upon rules upon rules upon rules. They don't do that in Panama. And I think that is symbolic of how they operate. You are, in effect, you're treated like an adult here. And that just makes everything run differently. But yeah, let's jump into the monthly review, and I'll cover it in more detail there. But first, a really big one you get a lot too is you don't hear this complaint from people that want to move to Panama or who have lived to Panama. It's always, and it's kind of funny with these things, it's always from people that just don't know what they're talking about. And that is that Panama is an evil tax shelter. And that's absolute nonsense. I think this came from the Panama Papers. Panama Papers created immense damage to the country of Panama. If you don't know what the Panama Papers were, it is people were using the Panamanian tax system and the system for setting up corporations in Panama to hide money from the countries they lived in. Panama has very good privacy rules for their corporations, as they should have. And this was abused, so they would set up corporations in Panama and not disclose their income to the country they lived in. I personally think that's not right, that's morally wrong. If you live in a country where they have certain tax regulations that says you have to pay worldwide taxes, like we have in Canada, for example, you have to pay worldwide taxes. I think it's wrong living in Canada using the medical system, which is not very good, but you're still using the medical system, and then you're hiding money in another country. That's wrong. I don't think that's right. But people can do whatever they want. But regardless, it had nothing to do with Panama. It couldn't have been done in probably in 10 other countries in the world. There are other countries that have very good setups for corporations and whatnot as well. But one of the big ones here I first wanted to address was the tax shelter issue. And I actually think, and we'll go through it now, but I think Panama probably has one of the most equitable and fair tax systems in the world. So the first big one with Panama's tax system that I want to cover here is the fact that they are a territorial tax system. There are many countries here in Latin America that are territorial. We have El Salvador, Paraguay, Costa Rica. I think there's a few more, but a lot of them are territorial, and it seems to just be a thing they do in Latin America. So territorial means that any income you earn outside of the country is tax-free, like income tax-free. Of course, you pay VAT and all kinds of taxes, or GST, HST, like we call it in Canada, but you don't pay any income tax. And this is actually extremely fair if you think about it, because if you're making the money outside of the country, you're not using the country to earn the money. Thereby, you're not paying. You don't have to pay anything back in that sense, except of course you're spending the money, which is the best way of giving back. But in terms of just for taxes, let's say I own a trucking company. I would be using the roads. I'd be using the police in case there's, one of my trucks get robbed, etc., etc. I'd be using the infrastructure and the legal system, right? A client doesn't pay, that happens all the time. A client doesn't pay and I take them to court. I'd be using the Panamanian court systems to do this. I am using their system, right? And thereby I need to pay money back because I'm using their system. If I'm making all the money outside of the country, Panama claims, and I agree with this, they have no moral ground on this money. But the fairness and the intelligent design doesn't really end there. So if you earn money within the country, you can earn up to 11,000 US within the country, and you pay 0% tax on that. So they are really helping the low-income population with this. It's incredibly fair. If you earn more than 11,000, then you pay 15% on that amount above the 11,000. If you earn above 50,000, then you pay 25%. So both of these are pretty low, like 15% is very fair 25% is fair by worldwide standards. If I have one small little gripe, it would be that we shouldn't have this 25%. Like it doesn't make sense to have different tax brackets. The lie that the politicians use for this is always, oh, the rich need to pay their fair share. I'm like, dude, tell me you don't understand math without telling me you don't understand math. Like 15% on 10,000 is 1,500. 15% on 100,000 is 15,000. The rich are already paying more. That is how percentages work. Then the VAT, which is, in Canada, we will call that GST, HST, PST, so tax on goods. That's actually only 7%, quite low, but it doesn't stop there. So for basic necessities like food, water, medicine, education, 0%. So they're really helping the population here as well. Then if you are a senior, this is also why there's a lot of retirees that go to Panama to retire from North America predominantly. There are a ton of senior benefits, so you can get some hefty discounts on transport and food and all kinds. The next one is traffic, and yeah, it's pretty crazy here. A lot of honking, a lot of merging. They drive very tight. A lot of the cars have little dings. There's not a lot of rules, and the rules that are there don't seem to really be followed that much. It's interesting to see. There are quite a bit of cops, though, at least compared to what we have in North America. And these cops, man, you do not want to mess with them. It's two guys on a motorbike. They're completely camoed out. They look like total badasses. One guy rides the bike. The other guy sits in the back with an assault rifle or a shotgun or something like that. So, if you want to misbehave in traffic, you might be able to outrun the motorbike, but I don't think so. But you certainly won't be able to outrun the bullets. So I reflected on this whole chaos thing over a few days because it's very different from what I'm coming from, Europe and Canada and the US. But I think I like this better. It's in some way, it's organic, it's chaotic, but also it's kind of like just the thing that I've alluded to or mentioned before is that we're treated more like adults here. If you want to cross the road and you get run over because you don't look, it's on you. I read a story about, I think it was a lady, she was walking in somewhere in North America, I believe. She was walking on the sidewalk, just on her phone, not paying attention, and she fell into a manhole and she sued the city. Like, good luck. That's just you're not going to be successful at that here because it's on you. Look where you're walking. This is entirely her fault, and in her crazy mind, she convinced herself it's the government's fault. It's on you. Look where you walk. And that's how they really handle traffic here. So I would not recommend getting a license here immediately. Honestly, I'll go learn to drive here. I'll probably be fine. But why? So really, you can just take an Uber. Ubers are stupid cheap here. When we live in Costa del Este, it's a little bit further out from the city. It takes about half an hour, maybe 40 minutes to get in. Half an hour. I don't think it took 40 minutes ever, maybe one time. It will cost like $6 to $7 US in an Uber. That is crazy cheap. And we were far out. We were in Costa del Este. Now that we are in the city, like if we take an Uber to go to Multiplaza Mall, which is probably more high-end mall here in Panama City, last time we went there, I think it was $1.78 or $2 or something like that. It is very cheap. So use Ubers for local transport. I would not recommend cabbies. I've talked to locals about this. Cabbies can be sketchy, and they are like that everywhere. I've had cabbies in Vancouver when I lived there. I still had a strong accent then, and they thought I was a tourist, and they started looping me around, and I told them, don't bleep around here. So this happens everywhere. This certainly happens in Europe too. So I wouldn't say that this is a Panamanian thing. It's just cabbies. Obviously, 90+% of them are good, but you run into a bad one and you get scammed. So just stick with Uber. It's nice and safe. They have a cool system where you give a PIN. That's not something we use in Vancouver. Where you give a PIN, so I don't really know why they do it, but it's an added safety feature. For longer drives, you can hire a driver. We have a driver we've used a few times, Joaquim. He's been just fantastic. If you're interested in a connect, I'll connect you. I don't take a cut or anything. I'm just trying to help the dude out. He's very friendly. His English is fantastic. So for longer drives, like for example, when we went from Panama City, or technically Costa del Este, out to Playa Caracol, that was a 2-hour drive. So for that, you're not going to use an Uber. You were going to have to hire a driver for that. And we paid about 100 US for that, which is very cheap given the fact that it's a 2-hour drive each way. So he's sitting in traffic for 4 hours and you're paying him about 100 for it. So very affordable. So the big myth here that you hear all the time on YouTube, if you've been watching YouTubes, I've watched so many YouTubes on Panama before leaving. It was my favorite pastime at nights. I would recommend you do the same. I gained a lot of knowledge from it, but it's not all true. It's the internet, right? So, and I don't know why this is across the board. I kept hearing this, that you can totally live in Panama City and speak English. That is just not true at all. I don't know what they mean by live, I guess, but you can, I guess you can use Google Translate all the time, but they also mentioned that a lot of people here in the city speak English. No, they do not. They do not. This became super obvious the moment we touched the ground in Panama. The security, what's it called, the border security guy that talked to us when we arrived, his English was deplorable. It's near 0%. We were able to figure it out, but it was not communicable. It was not easy. It was clunky. That's actually an interesting story that might actually help you. So typically you would get a 6-month status when you land in Panama. He was pushing back on that. I don't know if a lot of people have experienced this, but he started talking about 3 months. And our return ticket, I had bought one for about 6 months later, less. I think it was like 5.5 months after we arrived. Because you need, of course, you do need to have a plane ticket showing you're flying out of the country if you're arriving as a visitor, which you will, most likely. And we didn't have any PR status at that point. We still don't, but I had to explain the best possible way that I could. Okay, we talked to an attorney. We're applying for permanent resident status. We've been told we can stay here 6 months. And then at that point, welcome to Panama. So if you get that kind of pushback, just push back gently like I did, and then hopefully that should work. But it's definitely not standard. But on the English, his English was horrible. But we were able to make it through that. And then because we brought our dog, Butters, we had to go see a specialized vet in the airport, and that is... People also say that that's not that complicated. It's complicated, especially coming out of Canada, because you have to deal with a lot of government agencies in there, obviously completely clueless. I'm going to make a video on that because I know people need help on that. I would have been very grateful if someone had made that video before we left, but there is none of that out there currently. But yeah, anyway, so we had to go in and we had to talk to the vets in there you show this paperwork and they kind of approve the dog. They don't actually inspect him physically, but they kind of approve him. It was just as bad. It was actually worse. So the first girl, not a lick of English, nothing. And I think at that point I had already set up data on my phone, so make sure you buy a data plan that you can use. So you can just plug it in and you can use Google Translate. Do not buy it in the airport. That's apparently a bit of a scam. They overcharge at the airport, which obviously you wouldn't be able to do until you've gone through security anyway. But we were able to figure it out. And then I moved over to the next guy who was a bit involved. His English was absolutely horrible. But it was funny, like he just started laughing, like really like a big laugh. He thought it was freaking hilarious that I was stumbling with my Spanish, he was stumbling with his English, but we still figured it out. And they were very friendly. And obviously we were tired. It's been a long flight and we had taken an extra long flight because of the dog. We wanted to make sure we had enough buffer time for any kind of problems. But yeah, so it was a very pleasant way actually that they were so friendly and they thought it was so funny. It kind of made me happy. So yeah, so their English was very bad. Throughout the city, the English is almost non-existing. Like my driver, Joaquin, that I found, his English is fantastic. If we went in an Uber 10 times, I think maybe 1, maybe 2 could communicate a little bit in English. It's not, I would not make that a strategy of yours. What I did is I studied Duolingo for almost a year before I left. So I was able to communicate a little bit. But still, Duolingo is Duolingo. We're probably going to get a proper teacher, or not probably, we're going to get a proper teacher here because Spanish is also not Spanish. They speak different. I don't know if it's a dialect. I don't think the language technically is different, but the Spanish is different here than it would be in Mexico. They also speak very fast here in Panama, so it's extra hard to keep up. But if you're learning Spanish or Mexican Spanish on Duolingo, it's just not going to be 100% the same. But I think it's good enough. I would strongly recommend you definitely get on Duolingo or on our app, because do not count on being able to communicate here in English. It's not a good plan. And also, I don't think it's fair that we push our language and values on their country. If you come here to live here, like absorb their culture, learn their language, respect that. And also, they just get super happy when you speak Spanish, when you try. In the restaurants, oftentimes we just, no, we don't want to do in English, even if they do English, but we'll do it in Spanish. It makes them happy. And Spanish is a cool language, so why not learn it, right? So the next one is heat, rain, and outages. The heat I thought it would be a lot worse, to be honest. We were kind of told on YouTube that the humidity is brutal. My girlfriend is Chinese. She goes to Hong Kong from time to time, and we were really good. The humidity really impacts her in Hong Kong. So we were quite concerned that the humidity would be bad arriving, also because we're arriving in the rainiest part of the season in October. That's the highest season for rain, just before it turns into dry season in November. But I don't think it's bad. We're already feeling some heat adjustments when we walk around now. We don't think it's that hot. The rain is ridiculous. You can literally see it from the locals. It started raining, and they will just stand by the side under cover, because they know it ends. It will end like 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes later, and then you walk around too. And that's the thing. That also fools you a lot with the forecast, because I would check the forecast a lot back in Vancouver, just to get a feel for Panama. And it looked like it always rains in Panama. That's not true. It does not. It's just there is a probability of rain throughout the day. When it hits, it will be over quick. 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, and then it's done. We did have a few out in Caracol where it really came down hard, but there's also the Hurricane Melissa that was just absolutely causing a lot of damage, and I believe it was Jamaica. So it's probably because of that. Then the next one, outages. We have had nothing in Costa Leste. Again, that's also the second richest part of Panama. Here in downtown, we've had nothing either, but out in Caracol, we did. So in Caracol, you're already out in the sticks, and you have to factor that in. The first week was good, and I think this is also partly because of the Hurricane Melissa, but then the second week, it was bad. Like, we had one outage that was 6.5 hours long. That's not awesome without AC, and you can't work. But then after that, it got worse because the internet was impacted severely by the weather, and the internet provider out in Caracol was Tigo. So there's Tigo and Mass Mobile, Movil. It's not mobile, that would it be. And that was a problem because our cell phone provider was Tigo, and they also had Tigo internet there. And that's an issue because if Tigo goes down, Tigo kind of goes down. It's not entirely the same, but it is impacted. So I was a lot more impacted work-wise out there, which was a huge problem. I lost probably 3 work days, if not more. It would have been smarter. Obviously, you can't decide this, but it would have been smarter if the Airbnb had Mass Mobile. So that is, I talked to Joaquin, my driver, about it also, and he recommended that as well. So you have this redundancy. However, if you live in Panama City, I don't think you really have problems. He said it doesn't really happen. Like, I've had internet issues in Vancouver many times too. Nothing is 100%, but if you want to be on the safe side, which is what I'm going to do, I have my mobile provider through Tigo. I have unlimited data there. It's pretty cheap compared to Canada. It's insanely cheap. I think I pay $30 a month or something like that for unlimited data. But so I'll have my backup data on my phone that I can hotspot, and then we'll have our main internet provider will be Mass Mobile. So if Mass Mobile goes down, you just jump on Tigo and you're solid. But again, if you're in the city, it doesn't sound like this is really an issue. Like, power outages doesn't really happen in Panama City. Internet might go down here and there like it does anywhere, but it doesn't sound like it's worse than anywhere else. Then the next complaint is bureaucracy, but let's be honest, bureaucracy sucks everywhere. So we've had limited access to bureaucracy here in Panama. We had to deal with it at the airport, which worked fine. It's no worse than any other airport I've ever been to. And then when we had to get our initial PR status, you get like a 6-month PR status while your PR is being processed. So we had to go to a government agency to get that done. We had to get up at 5:30, which is a tad early. I get up early, so it wasn't a biggie for me, but for most that would be a problem. My girlfriend certainly didn't love it. But we went there. just to get there early, pretty much, because it just builds up. There's too many people. It's to get it over quicker. And we had to wait. We were there for 45 minutes. And we waited 10 minutes on the attorney, so that maybe we were there 35 minutes if we excluded that. Then we went in, they just printed the cards for us, bada bing, bada boom. We got the cards immediately and we were out of there. It was very, very smooth, to be honest. We've had way, way more problems dealing with the Canadian government coming here. Just absolute nonsense and just, yeah. I'll have some videos on that later, but I think the reality, maybe the bureaucracy in Panama is just as bad as Canada. I suspect it is. We've just dealt with more volume-wise in Canada than here. I think the reality is, with bureaucracy, it's always going to be painful. Like efficiency is a forbidden word in the government, let's be honest, right? And it's frustrating for anyone that's private sector, and if you're a business owner, you're going to be frustrated because it's just, why are you so slow? Why does this not work? It's not that difficult. But efficiency and government does not go hand in hand. I think the world will be a lot better if a lot of these people join private sector and learn to generate value instead. We don't really need all this bureaucracy. Sure, we needed to get a PR status, but a lot of the issues we dealt with Canada, I'm not sure if that really should exist. Like, if some of these jobs shouldn't exist. I think they would be better. They would be better for the world if they worked private sector, and I venture to say that they also would be a lot happier if they generated value in society. So I'd say overall, I'd score this an A. Like, I realized that we are obviously in the honeymoon phase here, but trying to discount that, I'd still give this an A. Again, these little negatives here, I'm trying to twist them around and look at them as positives, because I think it's just a better way of looking at it. And if you look at it like that, I don't really think these negatives are that big. But we'll see what happens when we pass through the honeymoon phase, but I suspect it won't drop that much, but there is certainly a honeymoon phase. I think that's always going to be there. So speaking about these kind of costs, if you want to call them that, what are the actual costs of living here? I'll probably create one, like a video where I explain, I go through actual cost in a spreadsheet or something like that. If you want me to do that, just let me know. Send me a comment. Again, I'm not just trying to get engagement. I want to know what do you want to know. How else would I know it, right? I can guess, but I don't know. But also part of it, the problem why I haven't done it yet is we are in an Airbnb. We're still learning to play this game and figuring out how we can get deals and how it works. And we don't want to get the white guy discount. We're trying to live as locals here. But I think one of the problems is that the Canadian dollar is, if you're Canadian, the Canadian dollar is just taking such a hit. The country has, I will create a very detailed video on this very soon, but the country has just completely over these last, 12 years. And the exchange rate between US and Canadian is very, very bad right now. Like Panama uses US dollar. Technically Balboa, but it's pegged to the US dollar. So it always follows US dollar. But I don't think it's truly fair to do a comparison. So when we're buying something here, we did in the beginning to kind of get a feel for it, to convert from US to Canadian, to understand, well, how much would this cost? And if you were to do this on everything, then I think it's going to be less cheap than you think. It's still quite a bit cheaper than Canada. Some things are not, of course, but we're definitely seeing huge savings compared to living in Canada, even if we convert back to Canadian dollars to compare. But what I'm trying to say is I don't think it's really fair to do that just because the Canadian currency is incredibly bad right now. It skews the image a bit. As a Canadian, we're getting extra screwed here, spending US dollars. I don't know when that will change. If the reality is, I don't want to make this political, but it is political. The Liberals did this, the NDP did this, and the population voted in the Liberals again, which is beyond my understanding. I don't understand why someone will vote for someone that have objectively ruined your country over the last 10 years. But maybe people just don't track the numbers, they don't see it, but they certainly feel the high cost of living, and that is due to the Liberals and the NDP. I know COVID sped it up, but we were still on track to that. And no, it's not Trump. Of course, it got worse with the tariffs, but we had problems long before Trump ever got elected. So until the until the population grows up and stops voting for these children to run the country, I don't see this getting any better. So due to that, we are completely disconnecting from the Canadian dollar. Me personally, it was actually pretty easy because I make most of mine in US dollar as it is. But we're just not comparing to Canadian dollars anymore because I don't think it's a fair comparison. And I just want to add one thing here. I realized that I didn't mention. If you want to disconnect from the Canadian dollar as well, which I think you should, if you want to move down here, you should. Like if you have a pension, I understand it's tough to do. You can't do that. That's the reality. But you might want to just consider getting like a side hustle going, or getting a part-time remote job or something like that, so you can get some US dollar or another currency coming in. Just in case it doesn't get better, I don't think it will be, but we never know. There's also, if you're dependent on CPP, I'd be worried. The data coming out on how the CPP is being incredibly mismanaged is very concerning. I would be careful being dependent on that. I would think a little bit about it, research it a bit, and then I would strongly recommend you look into getting a side hustle or a work from home job. I think anyone that doesn't have their own business should have a side hustle regardless. The world is very volatile right now, and especially with AI. Getting a side hustle is smart for everyone to do, and I think you'll probably like it anyway. But it will also give you a chance to have currency coming in that's not Canadian dollars. So yeah, that was our first month here. I hope you enjoyed this, and I would strongly recommend also that you, if you are Canadian, that look into a little bit of how Canada works and just see what's happening. I wouldn't want to trust anything that the state-sponsored media says. It's clearly propaganda. It is a propaganda machine after all. So research a little bit and try to understand how Canada is actually doing. The numbers are there. They're not. You can find them. But I will also be creating a video on the details of why we decided to leave Canada. But also, maybe it's two different videos, but I'll definitely have one video where I explain why we left Canada, and probably one or the same of why we chose Panama. But at the very least, I will have one video on why I think you need to get out of Canada. And I don't know, depending on when you watch this, I'll put it up here so you can click it. But if you watch this right after this was deployed or uploaded, then it will not be available yet. But you just subscribe and enable the notification bell, and you'll see when it pops up. But if it is available, that means you've seen this a fair bit after I uploaded this first one. And then just click onto that one. I think that will be very useful for you.